Hi, this video is entitled Talking Philosophy with Aliens. I intend for this to be a little bit whimsical, but I also want to explore some interesting ways of looking at the whole question of the SETI model of, let's say that the SETI school is correct and that our way of dialoguing with extraterrestrials would be through radio astronomy, we would be limited by the speed of light. They would not come here in ships, thereby excluding the UFO model, nor would there be stable wormholes or anything like that. Let's just say that the Frank Drake and Carl Sagan school is correct, and that our only way of possibly building a complex galactic civilization would be through radio astronomy and through shared information. The question is, what language would be used to communicate with them, and what possible ideas would be discussed. Now, this video is being filmed against the backdrop of the recent discovery of arsenic-loving bacteria, or let's say arsenic-tolerant bacteria in Mono Lake. And by the way, Mono Lake is a beautiful place. I'm sure that will do wonders for tourism at Mono Lake. Also, against the backdrop of the recent experiment simulating Titan's atmosphere, in which organic compounds, not life, but organic compounds formed. And so it looks like the idea of a universe potentially teeming with life is becoming more and more of a mainstream scientific idea, not simply among, let's say, the UFO milieu or among certain optimists like Carl Sagan, Frank Drake, and David McKay, and certain people who've been traditionally in favor of the idea going up against a skeptical scientific establishment that seemed to hold to the rare earth hypothesis for a long time. Now it looks like the rare earth hypothesis is seeding into the background. And so what I would say is that it's looking more and more like the question of not just intelligent life, but possibly not just alien life, but possibly intelligent alien life is becoming more and more of a question. So let's say that there is an alien civilization that has outposts everywhere, and it has an outpost on at the star system Vega. Let's just say that it's orbiting Vega, and they have a little outpost there. And just like in the scenario in the movie Contact, same scenario, it would take light 26 years to get to Vega and then 26 years back. And so we would be limited, we would have a limited time in which to communicate, so we would have to make every minute count. So if we were going to get to advanced concepts, we would have to start with mathematics. On this point, I agree with SETI, I agree with that school of thought. Mathematics is a universal language, but we've got to be careful because we couldn't start off with calculus because calculus requires a knowledge of symbols. We couldn't start off with geometry. Geometry would require symbols and shapes. We couldn't start off with algebra, again, symbols. Nor could we start off necessarily with transcendental numbers because that would be really complicated. I mean, getting into pi would again require geometry, trigonometry. We would have to start off with something very simple. We couldn't even really use fractions. We would have to start our communication, I would argue, based on I'm not an expert in symbols or in I'm not an expert in this field, but I would argue that we would probably have to start off with natural numbers. We could have 1 pulse for 1, 2 pulses for 2, 3 pulses for 3, 4 pulses for 4, and so forth. And we might start off with simple numerical sequences like, let's say, the Fibonacci sequence, where each number is the sum of the two numbers before it. So 1 plus 1 is 2, and then 1 plus 2 is 3, 2 plus 3 is 5, 3 plus 5 is 8, 8 plus 13 is 21. Okay, well, that could be a lead-in to a discussion of the golden mean, perhaps, because the ratio of each number to the number, the golden ratio, the ratio of each number, let's say 55 divided by 34, and then you have 89 divided by 55. As you go up, that ratio becomes closer and closer to the golden ratio. And so You could then lead from there to perhaps to geometry or more advanced concepts. But you really would have to start off with these sequences here. You have your powers of 2, which could lead into computers. You have your square numbers, or you have your prime numbers, which could also lead into codes and how to encryption, that type of thing. Okay, well, I think from numbers, though, you have to get to more sophisticated concepts, and you would in math, but I would say, though, if I really were a gambling man here, a civilization that's more sophisticated and advanced than we are, they wouldn't have much to learn from us in the way of math or science. I mean, it's possible that they might. Particularly, let's say, the ecology of our planet, biology. Yes, that they definitely would be interested in. But if I'm a betting man, they would be more interested in history, anthropology, meaning of our planet, especially if they can't visit here. They would rely on us to know about it. Our history of religions, yeah, to some extent, our science and mathematics, assuming that they, possibly mathematical systems might differ from world to world, and so they might view our mathematics as a kind of ethno-mathematics. Ethno-mathematics, some of the ethno-mathematics systems are very complex. We have the Navajo code breakers, so it's possible that they would have, just like we have much to learn, that we learned. It's even possible that the Navajo code breakers had something to do with the development of the computer, unacknowledged, of course, as is usual in the history of our relations with indigenous people. So it's possible that something we gave a technologically advanced alien civilization might help them in some way. But if I'm a gambling man, my real suspicion is that they would be more interested in our philosophy than anything else. And that a transition from natural numbers, from counting numbers, wouldn't be so much to fractions, which they would already know, as it would be to something like naive set theory. The set theory of, let's say, Cantor. The set theory of correspondences and bijections. The set theory that you could even argue Galileo used. I mean, it goes back that far. And I would say that from there, an entry of discussion into philosophical concepts, into our definitions of logic, our definitions of reason, our definitions of what these things mean might lead to very stimulating radio transmissions back and forth. Let's say once they learn our language, what a language is. So which language would we use? English? That's a good question. Would we use German? Would we use Russian? Would we use Mandarin? I mean, who knows what we would use? But whatever language we would use to communicate with them, I think that there would be an immediate interest in the development of philosophy, particularly more mathematical forms of philosophy, but mathematical forms that would lead to, let's say, the incompleteness theorem, or would lead to Bertrand Russell. My sense is that if we were really to communicate with aliens and we really want them to respect us, they would know that we're a primitive world. They would know that we're a primitive planet. We don't have to, they were primitive once too, so who's fooling whom? Okay. My suspicion is that the real way to gain their respect would be to engage them in a back and forth conversation about using mathematics as a universal language in terms of a discussion about meaning, about logic, about reason, about what not just the ultimate meaning of life and the kind of the grand metaphysical questions, now those are important, but also the meaning of what is truth. Is mathematics a great way to find out whether we can resolve the debate between mathematical Platonism and mathematical nominalism would be to have a communication like this with aliens. Do they consider mathematics to be in a kind of Platonic realm of being ultimately the real? And if they do, that's good evidence that a life form that arose on a completely different planet with a completely different process of how life arose on that planet and how it developed, that if they consider there to be a Platonic or universal realm, that may be good evidence that there is. Anyway, philosophy with aliens. You get all kinds of things on YouTube, right?